Hey guys, Anthony here. It is Monday, June 26th, 2023. Today's excerpt that I'm going to read is from this book here, 1 Second After by William Forstchen. Many of you in the prepper community have read this book. I have never read it. I'm about halfway through it now. And what I wanted to do today is to read a few excerpts from the book just to get you seeing some of the writing that's in it and the event that has taken place in this book, which is it's a fairly widespread grid down where there's no power. It seems to be an EMP has hit and it's fried everything. And so this book takes place in the North Carolina area over towards I guess west of Charlotte, and right before Asheville, up in the mountains there in the North Carolina area. So the main character in the book, this guy John, in this excerpt that I'm going to read, is talking to his old friend and Dr. Keller, and they're having this conversation about people and what happened to them when this event hit. So the doc goes on to say here on page 147, fear combined with people actually having to walk more than 50 yards, Doc Keller continued, there's been something like 300 deaths since this started, and this is only I think it's less than a week into it at this point. 300? Why not? Keller said dryly. You forget how fragile we really are. You forget, the most pampered generations in the history of humanity. Heart attacks, quite a few, just damn stupid accidents, at least 8 murders, and several suicides. To put it coldly, my friends, all the ones who should have died years ago, would have died years ago without beta blockers, stents, angioplasties, pacemakers, exotic medications. Well, now they're dying all at once. So it goes on to say now that they're into this EMP, medicine is scarce, so things have been getting looted and stolen, and now these people that are on these medications are now dying. Okay, so John glared at Keller for a moment, wondering what else he was thinking. It even hit pacemakers, he goes on to say. And he says, oh God, my mother has one. And everyone looked at him. He goes on to talk about his mother that lives in Florida that has a pacemaker, and he hasn't been able to get in touch with her. And then further down on page 148, people grabbing what they think they need, but not many thinking yet about a week from now, a month from now. He paused. A year from now. Have you held a public meeting to discuss with people what happened and what to do? So he's telling John that you guys in your community need to get together, have a meeting, because if this goes long term, there's several ramifications that are going to happen. You have to plan long term. The lights might not come back on. The power might not come back on. And he says, what? And then Kate says, what a disaster. Yeah, last night, 500 or 600 people showed up. It was hard to get the word out. It almost made it worse. The moment Charlie started talking about EMPs and nuclear bursts, some folks just heard nuclear and went crazy, saying they were going home to dig shelters. So people panicked. You see that here. Then he goes on here to talk about what's going on in Charlotte, North Carolina. Same as in Charlotte. According to Don Barber, John said, when the realization finally hits that this is the long haul, people will start looking at each other, wondering if a neighbor has an extra can of food in their basement or an extra vial of medicine hidden in a cooler, Keller said quietly. John knew he was talking about him, but he didn't react. This goes on earlier in the story. This guy John, the main character, he has a daughter that's a diabetic, and he had to go into a CVS or a pharmacy to try to get medicine. He ran into an encounter there. That's a whole nother story. But this is what people were running into shortly after this event took place. Either we try to pull together and keep order, or we'll go over to complete anarchy. That old Twilight Zone episode, Kate said. and Kate is the elected representative in the town here that they live in. The one where a bunch of polite middle-class types were having a friendly social. The radio announces nuclear war, and by the end of the half hour, they're killing each other or trying to get into the shelter one had in his basement. I remember that Twilight Zone episode. It's an excellent episode, and it depicts really how people will panic, and your neighbors at that point will not be trusted. It's every man for himself. Funny how we think in terms of film and television now, John thought. The Twilight Zone last evening had been dwelling on the episode where the aliens started flicking lights on and off in different people's houses, and soon everyone was in a panic, ready to kill one another, and the aliens sitting back and laughing. He talks about that episode. And then further down it says, "To hell with the Twilight Zone for the moment," Tom said. "Refugees. We're starting to get swarmed with outsiders. That has me worried," he says. "That has me worried the most now. At least we know who we can count on among our neighbors." So the town and the people that live there, okay, most people know each other, but now they're getting swarmed with these outsiders that were stranded on the highway when the cars all went down, and now these people are walking in swarms to the nearest, village or town, trying to seek shelter and supplies and what have you. So he said, hundreds showed up, and if too many come in, he says, we'll all be starving in a matter of days. So here's a good example. He says, "There's 1 million people or more in Charlotte," Charlie said. "Even more in the Triad, the surrounding areas. If 1 in 100 decides to make the trek," so if 1 in 100 of those 1 million plus people decides to make the trek out to the countryside from the city of Charlotte to where these people are, that means 20 to 30,000 mouths to feed showing up in their town, which they already have hundreds of people that already live there. So picture your town, USA. This happens, and you have X amount of people in your community, and you're trying to pick up the pieces and gather around each other, and all of a sudden you hear from the closest city that might be 20 miles away, 30 miles away, whatever. People have the tendency to migrate to the countryside when the city's resources run out. And so how many would be showing up at your town? Just think about the flood of people and how you would survive that encounter with thousands and thousands of people. Think about even if you're well prepared and you're armed, you have to have some type of plan in place and come together quickly as a community to try to stave off that kind of encounter. So he fell silent, and no one spoke for a very long minute. We'll have to have a plan," Kate said, and she's the leader right now, the elected leader of this town. "Sure, a plan. What plan?" Charlie sighed. We had a plan for everything else, but never for this one. Never once for this one." So he talks about how this community had plans, disaster plans in place, but never for something this, this big, or this nobody ever really thought about it. No one ever drilled for something at this level, or had a master plan up and ready to go, and therefore the precious first few days, when so much could have been done, were lost. So then they go on to talk about going into Asheville, which is like 11 miles away, and going and see what was going on there, and try to contact the council leader or the town leader there. So I'm going to leave it there in this video today, but I wanted to do this video, or a series of videos on this book as I read it, because it, even though we talk about EMPs, and that's a blast, like a nuclear blast from above our atmosphere that rains down and fries the electric grid, cars, because everything's chipped today and computer based, it fries these circuits. Those radiation waves get into the electrical lines, and like lightning bolt fry all the electronics in all these systems. But think about, on the other hand, our grid being attacked in sections by people that are already here in this country that would want to do damage or see us go down into anarchy. What they could do by just bringing several areas of the country and hitting vulnerable areas where the grid is, what would happen? So this same scenario could happen from an EMP or from just a regular attack, by, a few people. It doesn't have to be a lot of people. A few bad actors together that know what they're doing can put us down as well, because our systems are vulnerable. So just think about how you would react to something like this in your prepping and in your community. Try to foreshadow or forecast, hey, not only am I going to have problems probably with my immediate neighbors not having supplies or goods or wondering what I have in my basement, but down the road, a day, a week, however, whatever, there's going to be refugees that are stranded on the road if their cars go down. If it's an EMP, if it's a regular electric grid scenario, cars probably still be working, but people will be scrambling still for resources. Stores will still be being looted, and we'll see that further as I read sections of this book. But think about that type of planning of thousands of refugees flooding your community if this happened and the grid did go down, and many of them not maybe having good intentions, or a percentage of them having not good intentions, what that would mean for your family and you, and how you would prep for that, both physically and mentally. Okay, that's the video for today. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care and stay ready. Hopefully you're thinking about this stuff, because it's very, very real in the situations that we're living in today. Thank you for watching. Stay ready.